Hello, Trinity Episcopal Church. It's Tuesday, May the 5th, 2020. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Hope you're having a great day. It's my weekly check-in and meditation. So the announcements for this coming Sunday are we'll be having virtual coffee hour on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. There'll be more information about that on This Week at Trinity on Friday and also on our website. So please plan on joining us for virtual coffee hour at 9:30 this coming Sunday, May the 10th. And May the 10th is also Mother's Day, and so we'll be honoring mothers throughout the service. If you have women in your life who are your physical, your biological, your spiritual, or your emotional mothers, will you please send the names to Susan Blom so that we can read them during worship. Her email address is pastoralcare@trinitycovington.org, pastoralcare@trinitycovington.org. And last, you may have heard the news that Governor Beshear is going to allow houses of worship to open after May the 20th. That is news, but in a meeting with the clergy and lay leadership last week, the bishop has said that Episcopal churches will not be reopening that quickly. And he's basing his decision on the science. So we as the people have to, as the state, have to meet these 5 health criteria. There has to be a declining rate of infections for 14 days in a row. There needs to be adequate monitoring of new infections. There needs to be contact tracing for those new infections. The health facilities here in Kentucky need to have adequate capacity to handle any surge in new infections. There needs to be widespread testing, and lastly, there needs to be the availability of personal protective equipment. So these criteria mean that we're going to be opening later than May the 20th. And as you see, the bishop has set no date for this. So we don't know when, we know how we're going to measure that. So I'll keep you informed as we continue on this COVID-19 journey about when we're going to be able to reopen. And when we reopen, we'll be having limited number of people in church because we're going to need to be socially distancing. So it's not going to be an opening up and returning to the way things used to be. So listen to my sermon on this coming Sunday, and I'll have more details on that. So we're talking about compassion, and I've been talking about this for the last several weeks. And my definition of compassion is finding God's way to make true meaning in the midst of despair or indifference and acting on that truth. We've been talking about a variety of aspects of this, but today I want to talk to you about prayer. So the first thing we need to know is that prayer is not a Vulcan mind meld with God, where God's thoughts are our thoughts and we're all in sync. It's not quite that easy. I wish it were. The Book of Common Prayer says prayer is responding to God by thoughts and by deeds with or without words. And I love the way, if there's a more poetic way of saying this, that T.S. Eliot, the great English poet of the mid-20th century, says in his poem Little Gidding. And he says, prayer is more than an order of words, the conscious occupation of a praying mind, or the sound of the voice praying. And prayer is more than an order of words, the conscious occupation of a praying mind, or the sound of the voice praying. Now that doesn't preclude that, in fact, we can use set prayers, we can use words. Our Book of Common Prayer is full of lovely prayers that can help us have conscious contact with God. So I'm not denigrating standard praying, but it can be more than that. And I was thinking about it, that how we pray is affected by our image of God. So we have an image of God as Santa Claus, then we're going to be worried about naughty and nice stuff. We could have an image of God as a loving parent. We could have the image of God as a friend. We could have the image of God as a lover. And each of those would then affect the way that we pray with and to God. Now, prayer has to we have to allow prayer to inform our thoughts and actions. That is what the Book of Common Prayer definition says, and that's what T.S. Eliot implies. So we have to allow prayer to inform our thoughts and actions. And who we are as people affects our prayer life as well. So I'm thinking about the classic things of being an introvert or an extrovert. Where do you get your energy? Is it from inside or is it from outside? And so if you're an introvert, you may be able to get that energy, that conscious contact with God here. If you're an extrovert, you may then have to be in conversation with someone. And that's why things like spiritual direction or having a spiritual companion may be a helpful thing. And whether you're a sensate or an intuitive, do you get your information by things out in the world again, or do you have an intuitive sense of what goes on? So that's going to affect the way that we pray as well. And regardless of God's image or our spiritual makeup, we do need to pray. And again, prayer is responding to God by thoughts and by deeds, with or without words. So physical movement can be important, for example. That's a way without words. Might be helpful. And then we need to pray because praying shapes believing. That's a central dictum to the Episcopal Church. Praying shapes believing. And then believing is how then we begin to respond to God and to other people in our lives. So that's part of compassion. So we want to be open-hearted, to be compassionate. That is the end goal, one of the end goals of then prayer, is to do that by being compassionate in thought and word and deed. So that's my thought on compassion this week. Next week I'll have a special guest. We'll have a conversation about compassion. It'll be Rick Worth. Rick is a member of our congregation. He's a former Roman Catholic priest who now is the CEO of the Children's Home of Northern Kentucky and has a lot to say about compassion. So I hope you'll tune in for that next week. And if you want me to talk about anything during these meditations, please let me know. My email address is rector@trinitycovington.org, rector@trinitycovington.org. Okay, stay compassionate, stay healthy, and I'll see you in church.